Welcome to Natural Born Talents. Today's subject is a deeper look into the ego. We're all born with an aura, a mission in life, no matter how small, your soul, the core of your being, and an ego. The aura is to tell you what your mission in life is, what it's related to. The ego is generally the protection we all have in order to make it through life. However, the ego, when it gets too big, or you take it too far, it begins to devour the soul and overshadow the personality of the soul and the aura. I have noticed that telling egotists their aura is totally meaningless because they have allowed the ego to run their lives. And things like auras will have no meaning for them. Not only that, they will tell you that you're the kook and that auras don't exist. So again, when you're born in this world, you have your core soul, your auras, and of course your ego. Now everyone has ego, but don't panic. That doesn't mean you have succumbed to ego. Wise, strong people will work with their ego to benefit everyone. Weak people will use their ego to destroy. Now, there are many kinds of egos. Some of them really rather harmless, most of them destructive in one way or another. Some of the egos are what I call the sycophants of egos. Those are the people who follow ego. It's another kind of ego, but it's equally as destructive as the main, what we call the DS egos, which I'll get into later. So generally, the purpose of your life is to discover what you want to do and be in this life, and that's related to what your auras are. The auras will tell you the information, the basic information of what you came in this world to discover, to learn, to grow with. The ego is the one to push you beyond what you're capable of doing or what you came in the world to be. And this is where the problem comes in. Many people get addicted to ego and want more than what they're really capable of handling. They will start acquiring things, material things, money, privileged life, all of these things that go beyond what their aura or their original mission in life was intended to be. After all, ego is very tempting. On top of this, the ego has to put down someone else in order to move themselves forward. On the social scale of the matrix, it's all for image. Ego is all about image. When you try to talk to these people, they can't have a conversation outside of a very limited realm of thinking. This is why they get condescending, arrogant, hypocritical, angry, and if they let the ego go too far, they can get violent. When the ego overshadows the individual's soul or personality, their psyche, or their aura, you are no longer talking to the individual, you are talking to the ego, the cult that they belong to. The individual is no longer in control, the ego is. And the DS cult is one of the worst, simply because it is a satanic ego, a satanic cult, or some would say an extreme moralistic cult, and is pretty much in charge of the matrix at this time. So why do people succumb to ego? And the answer is actually kind of interesting and simple. It's because of fear. They fear their weakness. They fear their childishness. They fear themselves. They fear being discovered as less than what they are. They fear death. They fear life. So they go through life pretending that they're someone of authority, someone special, someone holier than thou, someone above it all. And they will join the cult of the elitists in order to survive. However, if they make it to this point, they are no longer human, and this is where it becomes dangerous, because then they have no qualms about killing, destroying, or interfering with another person's life in order to self-preserve their own. Now, I've seen some people come back from ego, and that's part of the game of the Matrix. I've seen this happen many times. I've seen some egotists figure out, wait a minute, this isn't what I really want to be in life, and start to move away from ego. When they do this, they're a lot of fun to be around. They have more interesting things to talk about. They don't shout narratives at you like the sycophants do. They become curious about all things. So the indigo souls, the empaths, and all of those people who kind of know this instinctively will actually be able to have conversations with these people, nurture these people, work with these people, or have fun with these people because they don't have this ego that's trying to put them down all the time. Now, the DS ego, which is the satanic ego, what I call the satanic ego, is the worst of the bunch. It's the one that thinks it's in control. Control freaks, the ones that are constantly telling others, you can't do this, you can't look at that, you have to follow this. Those people are extremely dangerous because they are no longer human. When they reach that level, very few come back, though I have to admit some do. The ego has provided these individuals with everything that they want in life, all the privileges that go with it. But to get those things, they have to constantly be in charge of other people. So they believe, at least. Or they have to have the same thing repeat itself every day the same way. Otherwise, fear starts to come in that they're out of control, and they start to get agitated rather easily. On the surface, they look calm and smooth, like they know everything. But the truth is that they live in constant fear of being discovered, that they are really quite less than what they are pretending to be, which is why many of them are narcissistic in their behavior. They all think they're above everyone else. They all think they have the right to control, to destroy, or manipulate anyone's life, whether they are elected officials or not, and includes religious organizations. And this is why the Matrix really is designed for them, not the empaths, not the indigo souls, not the people waking up and growing up, not the people who are tired of this crap. But in the transition, they don't exist. They all exist someplace what is known as the Inferno. Some people just call it another darker form of the Matrix. That may be true. But again, it's everything is manipulated and controlled in a way that suits very weak people. Now, of all the people on this planet, the egotist is the weakest. That's why they have the ego. And as I watch children, many children who feel insecure, who are not loved enough and disciplined enough against ego, are very susceptible to ego. As I've mentioned in other videos, the violet aura is one of the auras that is most susceptible to ego. But the violet aura also has the ability to control ego to its advantage, benefiting everyone. That is why this aura is called the hit or miss aura. Either they get it or they don't. This is the aura that has incredible leadership abilities. Therefore, they're going to be sometimes called the super egos. For they are going to be the ones that lead the sycophant egotists. The sycophant egotists don't generally have this aura because the violet aura does not take orders from other people. They give orders. But the sycophant ego is more than willing to carry some narrative they got from the violet ego or the DS ego, and they're willing to spew out all kinds of nonsense. And if you've noticed that whatever narrative they're pushing, they cannot accept other views. They cannot accept facts. They cannot accept anything that goes outside of their narrow-minded vision. They are equally as destructive because they carry out the orders of the DS ego or the satanic ego. So again, if you try to argue with these people, you're not arguing with a soul, you are arguing with a ego or cult that they are following. Now again, some come out of it and they figure out, well, geez, whatever I was following was nonsense. Where did my soul go? And they start to move away from ego. But unfortunately, in this day and time, that is kind of rare. Even if the narrative that they have been following starts to wane, they simply latch on to the next narrative that seems to be in the mainstream media or pulp culture. So if you're dealing with someone like this within your family or your friends, there's a certain point of no return, and that is when you can no longer have a reasonable conversation with them. At that point, I suggest you let that relationship go, and the reason being is because you really are just fighting a demon, an ego, a cult. You're not helping, loving, or having a relationship with the individual any longer. They are gone. However, in all fairness, some people do turn it around. So the best strategy probably is just to keep your distance until you can confirm they are no longer following the mainstream media, the crap from the government, or any other orders that come down from the DS cults that you see scattered throughout the world. These cults are disguised as organizations that supposedly benefit humanity, but actually work against humanity. Again, back to the control freaks. So everyone on this planet is fighting ego in one form or another, either the ego within yourself that you wish to grow past. And to do that, you just have to check yourself. Every time you say something, every time you react to another person, is that out of love for the other person or is it out of ego? And that's a dead giveaway. The problem that I'm seeing now is most of the egotists who have succumbed to ego and no longer can be cured from ego are displacing their issues on others. And therefore, you're likely going to have all these kinds of emotions dealing with ego, but really have nothing to do with you. It has to do with someone else. This is why you want to keep your distance from egotists, because they will displace their problems upon you. That's what ego's all about. Not handling your own issues and working with your own issues to make you stronger, but displacing it on others to make them weaker so you feel more powerful. In the end, people who follow ego will rot their soul to the core. Once they are rotted to a certain point, it can't be undone because they're no longer human. They are what is known as energy vampires, wraiths, ghosts, all of these beings that are littered throughout the world at this time that succumb to one of the egos or another. Now again, there are many kinds of egos, and I'll make a video on all the kinds of egos just like the auras and how to deal with each one. What you want to look for now, especially if you're an empath, an indigo soul, or a parent, is watch out for the egos within your children. Many of them can be weaned off of ego with the proper balance of love and discipline against destructive behavior. If you teach a child that their behavior is unacceptable because you instinctively know it has something to do with some sort of egotistical or narcissistic need, you can curb it. When a child feels that they have purpose, they understand their aura, for example, and they feel that they are loved, supported by their parents, then they are less likely to succumb to ego. There are some children that are born with ego, and all the love and discipline in the world will not be able to cure them. You can only try. I have seen many parents that I've worked with feel guilty that their child is a complete disaster, and they tried everything that they could, but the child ended up being an egotistical brat in the end. Other parents who just neglect their children or are abusive towards their children in one form or another end up with a child feeling unloved, undisciplined, and therefore likely to latch on to ego in order to survive. Totally understandable, but in the end you get another demanding brat in society that is just intolerable to be around. And sometimes we as individuals are responsible for influencing a child to go the wrong way. Maybe we bullied them a little too much or teased them a little too much that wasn't very loving, made them feel that they needed to latch on to ego to survive. If you've noticed that most of the politicians in the world, the leaders in the world, try to act like they're cool and calm but are the most selfish, childish beings you could possibly imagine. All a dead giveaway that they're following this kind of ego. And to have these kinds of people in a position of power over the rest of humanity is extremely dangerous, because they will start World War III as long as they can survive and profit off of it for themselves, but could care less about the rest of us. And this is the mistake the rest of us make, is that we allow these children into positions of power. You're putting literally destructive little brats into positions of power when you elect them. If the timeline of the transition does reach our world, these people will be gone, and it will naturally heal itself anyways. And the game of struggling against ego will no longer be a valid struggle. Those who can love, no matter how weak or how small, will be the ones that will remain. Those who have corrupted themselves through ego are the ones that have to leave. It's always a good idea to remember when you go through life that ego is the opposite of love. And any organization, including religions, that push an agenda and demand that you follow are not about love or the loving beings they profess to follow. Loving beings do not make such demands on humans to follow. Ego does. This is what I saw when I was on the other side. If you have any questions, please leave it in the comments section below. And thank you for listening. Hope to see you in the next video.